Hope you're having a great start to your new year. We want to thank you so much for joining us, spending part of 2026 right here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short, the father-son team behind Welcome Home Financial Partners. You can find them online, find out more about them, the entire team, schedule a time to speak with them, whether it is in the offices, locations in the Richmond area, or attend one of their First Friday events. That website, welcomehomefp.com, or you can give a call, 804-635-3550. Once again, 804-635-3550. It all starts with that complimentary conversation, beginning that retirement roadmap process. The show always begins with me checking in. Gentlemen, Happy New Year. Good to see you again. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Happy New Year to you as well.
Thank you so much. How's your New Year's resolution going?
I'm still in it, but we're still in the first week. So
Yeah.
there's that.
Okay.
Yeah. We might have 30 days to go.
Sure. How about you, Ralph?
We're still there.
Okay, good. Hanging on strong. I won't focus on the negative where a lot of them go by the wayside by the end of the month. But if it is your goal to retire in 2026, if you said this is the year I'm going to do it, a lot of resolutions, they kind of fall flat when they don't have someone to hold them accountable. So why not let the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners be your accountability buddies out there? Set up a time, start developing that plan. As fiduciaries, we say so often, they're going to tell you what you need to hear, maybe not what you want to hear, but they'll keep you to it. And then, you take the information, you do what you got to do, but it all starts with that conversation. Last year, actually, we did do a story about how 2025 was a great year to retire. The reason primarily being the interest rates, annuities were paying close to 7%. The article that I read said, while economic and market conditions shouldn't be a main driver of your retirement, it's certainly a factor. Well, there have been a couple of rate cuts at the tail end of 2025, so they are lower. However, we have had 3 pretty good years in a row of market returns, and there is that new tax deduction for seniors. So what do you think about 2026? Is this going to be a good year for people to retire? How do you spin this as an advantage?
Well, I'll tell you what, it'd be nice to have 4 consecutive years of really good gains. I think anybody would say that,
Absolutely.
Right? But I think, especially in the beginning of the year, it's a really good time to reassess where you're at. And I think that's where, you can capitalize on certain things. We already brought up the A word of annuities, and, they've been pretty good as of late. And, if you're looking for guaranteed income, that's definitely a good place to be. But hopefully everybody out there hasn't gotten too emotional with the stock market because, 25 was a good year, but there were a couple bad times,
Just
right?
a few.
So, we don't want to sell at the low point. We want to sell at the high point. So we want to make sure that, everybody out there is, in tune with where they need to be for that retirement red zone. So the stretch of retirement they're going to be in. So, I think there's a lot of things that people need to focus in on right now, especially because obviously what goes up must come down, right?
Right.
So if we don't put together 4 consecutive years in a row and you're going to retire in 27, things might not look quite as good. So I think that's one big thing. Most people, they get very comfortable with where they're at and they don't reassess where they are and they don't change up their strategies and they just get complacent. Well, when things are going well, great. But when things aren't going well, then things need to change.
Sure.
The year that you retire, you should be ready for it. And how do you know if you're ready for it? Unless you know if you got an income stream that's going to protect everything that you've got coming in, what your cash flow is going to be like. Because, I don't think people want to retire if they're going to have to go back to work to pay their bills. So you need to have a plan in place, and and that's why we do our roadmap process, is allow you to visualize what it's going to look like. Do you have enough money coming in? Do you have the expenses covered? Do you have all the lifestyles that you want to dreamed about all your life covered? But most people, you take a look at the market returns. Yes, it's been great, but are you in a point in your life where you need to take that much risk? And that's the biggest thing that we talk to people about is, where are you? What stage of life can you afford to take different risks? And those are issues that most people never think about. They just say, like Tim says, they put that money in since they were 20 years old and they left it alone like that. And now all of a sudden you're going to have to start utilizing it. If the market goes down, where are you going to be? You may not be able to take as much money out as you thought you could because it's going down, depleting a whole lot faster.
How often do you have to have that conversation with new clients when they come in? Because everyone in the working world, they should be on that accumulation mindset. I need to be chasing these big returns. But as you get closer and closer to retirement, you certainly don't need to swing for the fences anymore. The whole analogy, singles and doubles, or when.
Oh, for sure.
But how often do you have to have a conversation? You don't need to be taking as much risk. You should probably actually really dial that back a good bit. Is that a common conversation? Or?
Yeah, it is common, but it's interesting because there's also other people who have sat on the sidelines for so long and they missed out on quite a bit of returns over the last 10, 20 years, right? So, everybody's going to be in a little bit of a different position, but I can tell you that there's a lot of people that take entirely too much risk as they approach retirement. Mm-hmm. They don't take a look at, annuities that could guarantee you income. and they just focus in on what their 401k looks like or their TSP or 403b looks like instead of, okay, hey, instead of picking away at this pile of money, what's actually going to be my strategy? So I think, even though annuities, their rates have come down a little bit from their highs, but they're still in really good position compared to where they were 5-10 years ago. So that's a really good place to diversify your income.
And I think most people, when they come in, they have no idea what we're going to do for them. And that's kind of where we start, is just say, hey, let's during our first meeting we'll gather the information we need to do our roadmap, which is your income, your expenses, all your assets and things like that. But before they leave, they have to do something they never thought they would do for us, and that is take a test for us.
Uh-oh.
And that's a risk profile test of answering 11 questions and saying, hey, this is what I think, and this will tell us as fiduciaries where we're going to make recommendations for you based on your personal risk tolerance, not your neighbors, not your sons or your son-in-law who tells you this is what you ought to be doing because this is what I'm doing. It's always about you and what you're trying to do. And a lot of times it's interesting that the wife and the husband come in together and they both have to take the test separately. And no cheating's allowed, okay? But it's usually a little different.
I was going to ask about that, yeah.
And you have to kind of adjust what you would recommend based on what they both think. One of them is going to be, most of the time it's males that will say, I want the most I can get.
Sure.
And usually the other spouse is going to say, I want it a little bit more protected. I want to make sure that I've got the money coming in. So we're kind of caught into a dilemma some days between a rock and a hard spot just to say, hey, how are we going to adjust this to meet both of their demands? If you understand what I mean, right?
Oh, yeah.
Tim?
And I think it's important to focus in on the fact that everybody's different, right? Whether it's a relationship or a marriage or whatever, everybody's going to be in a different position and a different mindset. But that's not the end all be all, because obviously the numbers are a big piece of that. But, nobody wants to lose money. Everybody wants to make money, and everybody wants it fully liquid. Guess what?
No.
Good luck.
Not possible, yeah.
Right? So that's why you kind of set it up to where it's not just in one particular place. Like we talked about an employer account, whether it's the 401k or the TSP, if you've got everything doing the same thing at the same time, once again, being complacent when things are good, great. Things aren't doing well, okay, now we need to readjust, but you never want to be reactionary. And that's where a lot of people go wrong, is they say, hey, right now I'm going to get to this next level. I know I'm going to get to the next level, and then I'm going to start pulling back. Well, as they're approaching that level, boom, there it hits the downturn.
Yeah.
And then they get nervous because they're getting close to retirement, and they say, okay, guess what? I missed out. I'm just going to go ahead and sell out now. And that's not a good strategy either.
That is literally selling low. And if you get back in at all, buying high.
Sure.
So it is the opposite of what we all know we should do. But when the emotions are in play, it's really difficult to kind of talk people off that ledge. But if you have a plan in place, if you know, hey, the market is going to go up and down, and we've dialed back our risk because we are getting closer and closer to the finish line. In the same way as we are here at the start of 2026, a lot of people do, or they should at least, go to the doctor, get your checkup, begin your annual, the same sort of thing. Get your fiscal checkup, not just your physical one, your fiscal one. See where you are right now. If this is the year you plan on retiring, or if you're still in that red zone, if you're still 5 years away, there's no time like the present to really start, shoring up what you've got and making sure that all your ducks in a row as you get ready to embark on this journey. The team at Welcome Financial Partners, Ralph Short, Tim Short, they're here for you. All you need to do is take the first step. Well, actually, I take that back. The first step, joining us here on the show. You're showing that maybe this is your first time tuning in. Welcome. You're taking it seriously. The next step, of course, is letting them begin that retirement roadmap process. Put pen to paper. The phone number, 804-635-3550. Once again, 804-635-3550. You can also go online, schedule a time at welcomehomefp.com. Did you happen to experience any awkward goodbyes over the holidays? I had a few. When some people have a hard time deciding whether or not to stay or leave, awkward can also describe the farewell you may be wanting to give your current financial advisor for whatever the reason may be. But does that process always have to be uncomfortable, guys? Have you experienced that with clients who came to you this way? They said, I've been working with this guy and I want to come to you guys, but I don't know how to have this conversation.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it happens a lot. And there's a lot of people that ask us, hey, what do I need to do in order to move my money? Do I need to contact them, or can you handle it, or whatever? And, the fact is, we can take care of the entire process, but they've got to be part of it, right? But if you don't want to talk to that advisor, obviously you're not happy, right? If you were
There's a
happy,
reason, sure.
you'd still be there. You wouldn't be calling us. So I think, when it gets to the awkward goodbyes, I don't know if I'd call leaving your current financial awkward or not, but it's uncomfortable because change is uncomfortable for everybody, right? And a lot of people don't want that confrontation of saying essentially, hey, you weren't a good fit for me, or you didn't do your job, or you didn't meet your expectations. So I think that's where we'll step in and say, hey, this is what we do. We can help you out with all of this. You don't have to necessarily worry about that awkward goodbye or letting them know, hey, thanks, but no thanks type of deal. And I know Dad recently had just received an email from a client, and there's a decent little story there.
Yeah, and I would say that for most clients, it is a smooth transition, but not always.
Okay.
So be prepared for that. And we always tell the clients, understand that you're probably going to receive a phone call from your advisors if you move the account over to us. Don't worry about it. Just say, hey, that I made a decision to move on. But sometimes even the custodians will try and weigh the process, make it a little bit longer than they need to. But I remember this one just happened this week, in fact, before we got here, that been trying to move the money, and they had it titled in an improper way, and we've been trying to work it out, and they said that they had taken care of it, and it's been 6 weeks, and finally come to find out that she called the advisor, and the advisor sent a nice little nasty note back saying that it wasn't his fault. His office wouldn't do anything like that. It had to be the other advisor's office that didn't know what they were doing. Yeah. She wrote back and said, this is very unprofessional. I'm so glad I'm not staying with him anymore. So, those things happen. You just don't need to worry about it because in the end, it's your money. What do you want to do with it? It's your money. It's not his money. It's not our money. Okay? It's your money. So we're here to help you get to where you want to go with your money. Okay? So if you feel like it's an awkward thing to do, don't worry about it. Let us take care of it for you. We can do that. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than we anticipate.
Quite frankly, if you're going to be moving and your advisor does not reach out to you for whatever reason, I think it's a good sign that that's a lack of communication, which is probably what led you to do that to begin with. As fiduciaries, Ralph and Tim Short, they will, again, we say this many times, they'll tell you what you need to hear. If you are set up and you're in a good position, they will let you know that. If someone is doing right by you, they'll certainly let you know that. If there are changes that need to be made or should be made, they'll let you know that as well. Ultimately, the information is up to you to take or leave. But Ralph, I think you brought up a good point. Who are you saving for? What is this retirement for? Is it for the advisor? Is it to make the advisor rich or to help, pad their client base? Or is it for you and your retirement? I think most people, they want it to be for the latter, but I think there's a few that probably do it for the former because of that awkward conversation. It doesn't have to be an awkward conversation, or even if it does, it's a necessary conversation to have. So come in, have that second opinion. It's complimentary. And like I said, if you're in great shape, they'll let you know that. If there are some tweaks that need to be made, they'll let you know that as well. And then you go from there. But it all starts, again, 804-635-3550, or go to welcomehomefp.com, find out more about this First Friday events. Let's talk about that really quick because the First Friday is coming up. The first was technically, the other day. But what can people anticipate for those events?
So the First Friday is really nice because it's informal. It's at the Ashland office, right? So we, have some hors d'oeuvres, some drinks. That's why it's called a happy hour. But obviously, we're not there for that essentially. Right. So we just kind of review different topics, see what's going on in the market, what's going on in the world. Kind of talk about it a little bit more informally. And I know that there's a lot of folks that'll come in and it makes it a little bit easier because it's a group session and they don't feel like they're going to walk in, which they shouldn't feel like that, but they'll walk in and have the door get locked behind them.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people
corner them. And,
I think a lot of people appreciate it, but I think you were right with when it comes down to one of the number one reasons or the number one reason why people want to switch is they don't have the communication, right? I think a lot of people, I can't remember what big box firm it used to be that had that TV commercial, but it was people walking around with big numbers that were over top of their head, right? And I think that's where a lot of people feel is, okay, hey, everything was good in the beginning and now the honeymoon's been over for quite some time and I don't necessarily know what I'm doing, right? I don't know what my investment strategies are. I only meet one time a year. Like there's a lot of things that'll go. And there's some people that say, hey, when I signed up, I haven't spoken since and it's been a few years, right? So specifically, if that's somebody out there listening, I mean, it's time for a second opinion, because obviously if you haven't talked to somebody in 2 years or 3 years or whatever, times have changed.
Especially with what we had last year, with the tariff talk and DOGE and a lot of reasons for people to maybe feel a little bit nervous. But if they weren't having that conversation, if they weren't being proactive and reaching out to you, or, you try to reach out to them and you were getting voicemail after voicemail, lack of communication, I think is something to seriously take a look at. Same sort of way if your doctor is being, not dodgy, but if it's hard to get in touch with them, or you're getting referred to this, that, or just constantly trying to chase them, getting a second opinion, going elsewhere, looking elsewhere, having that conversation. Again, those First Friday events, informal setting, but I think having someone who is local and a fiduciary, 3 offices here in the Richmond location, but also acting in your best interest, I think it's certainly worth taking a look at. And from what I'm hearing, not going to cost them anything but their time.
Exactly. And it makes it more comfortable, right? And we do it, 5 o'clock on Friday, the first Friday of every month. Now, obviously, some months can't happen every time, right? But, obviously, you go to the website, you'll see everything. But, I think it makes everybody a little bit more relaxed, because money is personal, right?
Absolutely.
And some people don't like to open up. And sometimes if it's more comfortable and there's more people and we're not talking super specific stuff or not anything necessarily about you, it makes it a little bit easier. And that's when, okay, hey, let's go ahead and book that first meeting, because now I feel comfortable. I like what you got to say. I like what we're reviewing here. And then we can kind of take it from that point forward.
It all begins again with finding out about these events, attending one of the events. Go to welcomehomefp.com to find out more about them. You can also give a call if you want to just set up a time to speak with Ralph and Tim, have that complimentary conversation, begin that retirement roadmap process. 804-635-3550. Ralph, what do you keep the thermostat at your house?
Usually around 68 to 70 degrees, depending upon the weather outside.
Okay.
But then at night, we usually around 65.
Okay. Tim, what about you?
Well, it depends on the season. Right now it's set at 70 because it's bone cold.
That's fair.
But other than that, during the summertime, we usually keep it to 68, 69 degrees.
Okay. Okay. All right. Kind of the opposite there. I keep mine about 71 pretty much year round, just comfortable. I do like going to bed cold at night, having it cold, but warming back up. This is a debate that happens every winter. How warm should people actually keep their house? Well, the U.S. Department of Energy says 68. So, yeah, Ralph, you got it. Keep that when you're awake, and then when you're asleep or out of the house, you're supposed to drop it a little lower. This conserves energy, supposedly saves some serious money. So this isn't a energy or a thermostat show. This is a retirement show. How do you help clients set their financial thermostat so that they're not taking too much risk or too little as they get closer to retirement?
Well, I think it's important. Number one, obviously if you are married, you have to agree on what that's going to look like too, right? And I know in my marriage in the early stages, that was an argument that we had quite a bit, because my wife's a little bit more cold-blooded than I am. So, but now we kind of see a little bit more eye to eye. But talking about, the energy costs, especially here in the Richmond area, are going up, right? So that's definitely one thing that you got to pay attention to, because if maybe we kick it up from 68 to 70, and maybe that's going to save us some money, you can kind of take a look at that. As far as inflation is concerned, is the energy costs are going to keep going up. But you got to assess where you're at, right? I mean, we've already kind of said it is during the winter time, we're probably going to have it a little bit hotter than we do in the summer. Because if you get cold in the summer, guess what you're going to do? Open up that front door and walk out on your front
That's
porch.
all you got to do, yeah.
Makes it a little easier. Whereas right now, if things are hot, you're going to go outside and cool down. So I think, start with a risk assessment that kind of shows, okay, hey, depending on where we're at, what stage that we're at, kind of going back to a thermostat, is if it's the summertime, we know what the approach is going to look like compared to the wintertime. So, when you're 20 or 30 or 40 years old, that approach is going to look a lot different as far as risk is concerned compared to where we're going to be getting closer to retirement.
Right.
We talk about the retirement red zone quite a bit. Probably need to throttle back a little bit on that risk, or at least take a look at rebalancing, because we've said this a million times. There's so many people that still have the same investments and the same strategies that they did 30 years ago. That stuff might have worked back then, but it might not work for you now.
Some of those companies might not be around anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I met with a guy from Circuit City the other day, and he was talking about his old Circuit City 401k.
I have not heard that in forever.
Yeah. And I was like, Circuit? Oh, yeah, I remember Circuit City. I mean, it's been a minute. But yeah, so that's where it's at is, what you've done, great. We'll pat you on the back. Things look great. But as we're getting closer, things are going to look a lot different. And the worst thing that you can do is take on entirely too much risk, because what we have to focus in on is what the income's going to look like once we get to retirement, because we still need income, right? Most people nowadays don't have pensions. So Social Security is going to be in question probably for forever, right? I mean, it's always 2033, 2034, 2035, whatever. I mean, they're probably
getting closer.
Yeah, they're going to come up with a new year probably eventually, but we'll see how that all shakes out. But I think that's kind of step number one, is you need to reassess what your risk looks like.
And I would say, if you think the conversation between a husband and wife about the thermostat setting is difficult, think about the money conversations that you need to have. I think
that's why I'm on this side of the
but that's the thing that you need to do. You need to be on the same page. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be exactly, because it's never going to be exact same opinion, because it's always going to be different. But you need to be on the same page, because if you're not, it's very difficult for us to sit there and say, this is what you should be doing, when one of them says, no, that's not what I want, but that's what she wants. So the thing to understand is everything is going to be based on what you're trying to do. Everything's going to be based on your risk tolerance. And as you get to retirement, that conversation is probably more important than the thermostat question when you start talking about your temperature in the house. Because right now, you've got to figure out how you're going to pay for that electric bill. How are you going? Where's your income coming from?
Right.
Credit card bills, things like that. You all need to be on the same page. And guess what? Like Tim says, once you set it, it's not set it and forget it. It's everything's going to change during your retirement years, because things happen. Maybe your adult child loses his job and has to come back. You didn't plan on that. So you kind of have to agree things like that. Maybe the grandchild needs some money to go to college and stuff. You have to agree on things like that. It's not just about, well, what vacation do you want? It's about life. And what about your medical? What happens if you have to go into a nursing home? How's all those things going to play? Do you want your spouse to live in a nursing home when you're still living at? I mean, those are all questions that needs to be entertained. And yes, Tim, I'm not talking about our relationship between me and you about whether I go to a nursing home or not. That's already been decided.
Well, and also, too, about vacations, I'll disagree with you there. That is a big piece of it, too. But I think you're right, is not everybody's going to be on the same page. Mm-hmm. Now, my wife and I have a perfect marriage. I hope she's listening. But if you're not on the same page, you at least need to be in the same chapter, right? But actually understanding, because, I mean, all three of us are going to disagree about certain things, right? It's just what it is. Sure. So you can't say to the T, this is what it's going to be, and this is where it's going to be for forever. Things are going to change. Today is going to be different than tomorrow, and so on.
It's not one of those situations where if you've been, at a restaurant, or perhaps your old office where the thermostat is locked under that plastic case where you can't you can't adjust the temperature. You're going to have different seasons of life. You're going to have different seasons, and the same sort of thing. What might be comfortable for you in the summertime, in the early years of your retirement, and your risk tolerance for the latter years, because that is money where you can very much afford to think like a younger investor. You can let that grow.
Sure.
Going back to the thermostat analogy, I know that obviously when I'm not at the house, I can let the temperature be be a little colder in the winter, or a little warmer. But as I get closer, as I'm getting ready to leave work, I go ahead, because I've got a smart thermostat and I love it, right. Be able to adjust it so that it'll be ready for what I want when I get home. Same sort of thing with retirement. There are these phases where you can be more aggressive, for money 10 years from now. But as you get closer and closer to that 10-year mark, as that does get closer, you want to dial that back a little bit. So again, it's finding what is comfortable for you and ideally your spouse, and then crafting a plan around that and understanding that things will change and the plan should be able to change as well. That is what you get with the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners. It is that retirement roadmap. It'll change. It'll grow with you as the situations in Washington or what have you warrant the changes as well. But it does not begin until you reach out and set up a time to speak with them. Again, complimentary conversation. Begin that retirement roadmap process. 804-635-3550 or online, welcomehomefp.com. One thing that I feel like the three of us probably do disagree about is football. What teams do you root for? We won't get into it right now. But I bring this up because Larry Fitzgerald Jr., he played 17 years with the Cardinals, considered to be one of the greatest wide receivers in NFL history. I think we might all agree on that. But he admitted on the Deal podcast that his first steps into the world of retirement, they were a bit of a stumble.
When I first got out, I would say the first year, it wasn't a lack of opportunities. It was definitely a lack of structure. I was accustomed to be a very structured schedule. And I wouldn't say I love structure, but I thrive with it. I was a ship in the ocean with no destination. And that was a very lonely feeling. And so I needed to get the structure. And once I got the structure, I developed the purpose. And then once I got the purpose, I feel like I was able to find the things and outlets that really suited me and I wanted to be a part of.
It turns out retirement didn't necessarily suit him because he's now an analyst on ESPN. But do you go beyond the charts and the spreadsheets to help clients avoid that feeling that they might be lost in retirement?
Well, sure. And I think that's often overlooked, right? Because like he says, is you get there and it's like you've had this structure, and I'm sure his structure was probably a little bit different than our listeners.
Probably.
He's probably getting up at 3:00, being at the training facility by 4 and, doing all those things where, there's not a whole lot of people that are getting up at 3:00 and prepping before they actually go into the office. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people that don't necessarily know what they want to do. And we meet with people quite a bit as, what are you going to do when you retire? Well, I'm not quite sure because they've never thought about it. They worked so hard for so long is that wasn't really a thought in their mind because they didn't necessarily have the time, right? So I think it's very important to focus in on what in retirement you really want to do, because you'd lose that structure. Your alarm clock's not going to go off. If you don't have anything else to do, you don't want to just sit at home and rot your life away. And
right.
that's not what you retired for. So, have a good game plan as far as, hey, what do I want to do? What kind of trips am I looking at? Do I want to pick up a hobby? Do I want to start golfing? Do I want to play pickleball? I'm sure Larry Fitzgerald picked up some golf because I actually ran into him at the Masters tournament a couple of years ago. Oh. But he is one hell of an athlete. So, yeah. But yeah, I think it's important to really focus on what you want to do in retirement.
And I would say most clients never think about things like that. I remember somebody that came in to me and we were talking about his retirement roadmap. And I said, this is a process where you can visualize what your retirement is going to be like financially. But have you thought about your purpose, what your goal is? And they kind of looked at me like, what do you mean? I said, what are you going to do? And he said, well, I'm just going to retire. I said, you don't want to retire from life. You just want to retire from work. I said, but you need to be able to understand that your lifestyle is going to change dramatically. And now you got to figure out what it is that you want to do. So a year from that date, when he retired, he came back for our annual review, and he said, Ralph, I just tell you what, you are so correct when you told me that about the purpose and mission or whatever it is. I can't stand it anymore. I can't stand this retirement gig anymore because the only person I meet is my wife, and that's the only person I talk to. I just can't take this anymore. I'm a people person. I'm going to go back to the workforce part-time doing what I used to do because I meet people all the time, and that's what I do. And he said, I never thought about that until you said something, and it actually came true. So, there's just so many different things out there that people aren't aware of, mainly because guess what? You've never retired before, have you?
Right.
And I know, Chris, that you're not anywhere close to it, but you probably haven't thought about what you would do.
Thought about it a little bit.
If you retired. But, you do have to have a purpose, whether it's a volunteer for a charity or some mission that you felt like that you needed to do. That's great. Have a purpose. Do what you want to do.
I'm going to guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that second meeting you had with that gentleman, his wife was not present.
You got that one correct.
Because that would have probably, I know we talk about you guys doing some marriage counseling in your offices sometimes. That's a whole other level if he's that forthcoming. But, it is a great point. What do you want to retire to? Hopefully you've thought about it to an extent, but, just coming off winter break, my son, a couple weeks, and it's not as drastic as it is in the summer. For a day or two, he just wants to kind of sit around, do nothing. Thankfully, we have the holidays, and that took up a bit of the time. But, if we stay idle for too long, he goes, I'm bored. What do we do? Yep. And then we find things to do. Those things typically cost money, right? Like,
for sure.
There's not much that's cheap out there that he finds entertaining, at least. But the same sort of thing in retirement. What do you want to retire to? If you have an idea, whether that is, some stewardship or spending more time with the grandkids. Maybe it is going back to work in some capacity. That is a little bit of homework that, I know we're talking about homework and tests for you guys out there, but a little bit of homework that hopefully you've already done. But think about it, and then let the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners craft that plan around that for whatever your retirement, what you want that to look like. And bear in mind, that'll probably change over the course of time. Next 5 years, you develop a new hobby that you like to venture, maybe playing more pickleball or taking up golf. And then the plan can change with that. That's the purpose of that retirement roadmap. Sometimes we veer off course. How do we get back on track to where we want to be? And that is that relaxing and hopefully happy, enjoyable retirement. That all begins with a phone call, 804-635-3550. Once again, I want to encourage you to go to the website, check them out, find out more about the First Right events, attend there, welcomehomefp.com. But I want to thank you, as always, for joining us, spending the start of your new year right here with Ralph and Tim Short, the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners right here on Aspire to Retire. Hope you have a great year ahead of you. Hope you have a great week. Let's make 2026 a great one. Gentlemen, same for you. Hope it's a great year. Appreciate the time. As we wrap up, though, I want to leave you with the final word.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And, you asked me in the beginning about New Year's resolutions and if I'm still there, and I'm still there right now.
Okay.
But, of course, we've got 30 days to go. But
I'll check back.
The other question is always, too, is, what's the appropriate time to stop telling people Happy New Year's?
Right.
So I think right now, we're still within a week. Mm-hmm. I still think it's appropriate to say Happy New Year. So Happy New Year to everybody. But, yeah, I mean, it's a new year. It's really a good time to kind of reassess where you're at. Give us a call. We'd bring you into the office and start the retirement roadmap process. Obviously, we talked about test taking and questions galore. It's not as bad as it sounds, but it's important questions to answer. It's an important questions to think about. Like we just talked about with Larry Fitzgerald, is he had no real goal or no real place to head to, right? No destination. So, these are things that we do day in and day out, and a lot of people appreciate the conversation because they've never thought about it before. So, once again, it's a new year. It's a good time to assess where you're at and figure out where you want to be and how we can help you out. So once again, everybody give us a call. We want to thank you guys for listening. And once again, Happy New Year.
All content is for information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax or legal advice or provide the basis for any financial decision, nor is it intended to be a projection of current or future performance or indication or future results. Opinions expressed herein are solely those of Welcome Home Financial Partners and Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC. The information contained in this material has been derived from sources believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness and does not purport to a complete analysis of the materials discussed. All information and ideas should be discussed in detail with your individual advisor prior to the implementation. Each individual investor's situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstance. Advisor services are offered by Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Virginia. Being registered as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Insurance products and services are offered through WPI Holding, Virginia Insurance License Number 138509, an affiliated company. The information contained herein should in no way be construed or interpreted as a solicitation to sell or offer to sell advisory services to any residents of any state other than the state of Virginia or where otherwise legally permitted. Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC and Welcome Home Financial Partners are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency.